Hey guys, welcome to the first episode of A Journey with Jake, and today we're blessed to have my good friend Jamison Rambharose. How's it going, man?
Beautiful as always, brother.
Good. He's the owner of Lucia Light. I'll let you introduce yourself.
Sure. Yeah. So I am the owner of Lucia Lighthouse. It's a brand about opening up consciousness and awareness. Work with a really specific tool called the Lucia number 3. But that's not all I do. I'm a dad. Entrepreneur life is interesting. You get into a bunch of different things. You do cool stuff like make podcasts. Having kids, playing video games.
In the background, just chilling.
Yeah. So family man, psychonaut. That's a big part of my life. Psychedelics are a huge part of my life.
For sure.
Yeah, world traveler. I'm going to be going to Europe for the first time next week.
Damn, nice.
Lots of fun.
Sweet, man. Well, let's get into business talk.
Sure.
So, going to Europe for Lucia Light?
Yeah, so the Lucia Light, this is the flashing light. It's a flashing strobe light system that I work with, and it was designed by two mad scientists in Austria. What's up, Dirk, Engelbert? Coming to see you guys next week.
Shoutouts.
So I will be in Austria. Yeah, it's the 10-year anniversary of the Lucia Light. They first designed it, 10 years ago in their office. They retrofitted their espresso machine with two lights. I guess an espresso machine had all of the existing robotics they needed to make this light.
What?
So they took apart their espresso machine and turned it into, that was the Lucia number 1.
Right.
And then it eventually evolved into what it is today, which is the Lucia number 3, which is flashing light at really specific frequencies to just put you into another zone.
Incredibly powerful. It's like a high, I can't describe it as well as he can, but basically what it is, it's a very high-powered flashing light that you go under with your eyes closed, and it helps activate DMT in the brain?
We're never going to be able to prove that, and honestly, the way that psychedelic research is going, I'm not even sure that DMT is as prevalently produced in the brain as, let's say, the lungs, for instance. But yeah, there's this idea out there. Rick Strassman did all those studies in the 90s with DMT, theorizing that it was produced in the pineal gland. And the Lucia Light does absolutely stimulate the pineal gland. That's for sure. I mean, you get that pressure in your forehead. That we know is going on. Is it stimulating it to the point where you're actually producing your own DMT? I don't know. I mean, a lot of people compare the Lucia Light experience to DMT, ayahuasca, and other types of psychedelics, mostly tryptamines. So it's definitely in the ballpark, but I would be irresponsible to say that we're producing our own DMT with it. Maybe a little bit more of an altered state of consciousness from a psychological perspective, maybe not a biochemical one, But it is really similar to breathwork. I compare the light to breathwork a lot because it's first of all, it's substance free, right? So there's no additives. You don't have to put anything into your body.
That's perfect for people that are willing, ready to go there, but not go there.
Totally, but it lets you explore that space in a really gentle way where you're kind of a lot more in control. You blast off on DMT, it's you just buckle up, right?
Yeah, exactly.
But breath work, the Lucia Light, you gently get to observe the space and just communicate with it and be with it in a really beautiful, gentle way. So, does it produce DMT in the body? Probably not, but it could. You never know.
My experiences have been DMT-esque, but then again, I bring the breath work underneath the light too, so it's not 100% sure what it is, but it's a very powerful tool.
Totally. So that's what I'm going to be doing in Austria.
Dope.
I am going to be flying into Venice though first, so if anybody has any recommends for the best gelato in Venice, hit me up. That's something that's on the bucket list for sure.
Dope, man. So how'd you get introduced to the light?
It's actually through floating. Floating was kind of I always tell people floating is my gateway drug into the inner journey. My wife was working a really terrible, boring job, and she started watching Joe Rogan podcast.
Yep.
And she was like, "Yeah, you gotta check out Joe Rogan podcast. He talks about a lot of stuff you think you'd be into." I'm like, "The Fear Factor guy," I checked it out anyways, and he's a deep dude. He's got a lot of intelligent things to say. He's introduced me to a number of really cool things. One of them being floating. So I went out and I started jumping into float tanks. For those of you who don't know, sensory deprivation is really awesome. And it was really my first deep meditative experience. I had always really been into meditation, but reading about it, academically into meditation. But floating was when I really got my feet wet, so to speak. And started actually doing meditation, and it really brought me into this whole other world. I fell in love. I was a float junkie. I was floating every week. and I wanted to open a center. So I went to Portland. They have a really cool conference out there, and a workshop on how to start a float center. And I decided to go. I ran into a vendor there who was set up with the Lucia Light. The U.S. distributors were there, and that just blew me away. It was like my best float times 10. You know, I've had psychedelic experiences in a float tank, but it's hit or miss. You know, I'd say 1 in every 25 floats, I have a really deeply visual psychedelic experience. But with the Lucia Light, you get that every single time. So it quite considerably blew me away. And even then, I still kind of put it in the back of my mind. I was like, I'll put this in my float center when I open my float center, because float center was still my focus. Then I came back home, and I got lifed. We're having another kid. Me and my wife were having another kid. We decided to buy a house out in Guelph, so that changed my financial territory. So I decided, float center, maybe later, when I don't have such a young family.
Totally.
But yeah, this Lucia Light thing, let's give it a go. So I just bought that. That was about 3 years ago. I just bought it and just decided to figure out how it's going. And if I have anything to say about entrepreneurship after the 3 years of being in it, that's kind of how it is. You just gotta figure that shit out as you go.
You jump into it, right?
Yeah.
You just figure it out.
Yeah, I mean, there's some amount of planning that goes into it, but yeah, the best business advice I've ever gotten is just throw shit at the wall and see what sticks.
That's true. Yeah. But it depends what you're throwing, right?
Yeah, that's true.
So tell us about your journey.
Yeah,
the
so
3-year journey with the light.
Oh man,
it's got to be pretty crazy.
It has been crazy. So the first 2 months were totally, the inward journey for me. I just locked myself in the basement with it and just used it, sometimes 2-3 hours a day, just to really explore what the lamp can do, because it does come with about 150 pre-programmed sessions.
Okay.
And not to get too technical about it, the way that it elicits the effects is the sequence of frequencies. So if you put together a bunch of frequencies that don't really make sense, you could actually probably, feel some discomfort, or it probably wouldn't feel great. So there's 150 sessions that come out of the box with this thing that were designed by, the clinical psychiatrist and neurologist who invented it. So
for specific.
Well, it's really hard to say what sessions do what or what frequencies do what, because everyone's so individual.
Right.
And this is something that I found out, in that exploration phase, that 2 months where I just dove into every session. I would do the same session on different days and have completely different experiences.
Okay.
So it's really hard to pinpoint what frequencies do what. We have certain ranges. Neuroscience is has been pretty good at sort of identifying what ranges of brain waves are in, alpha, beta, theta, delta, all the typical brainwave ranges that you have. And so one aspect of the Lucia Light is entrainment, so we can train your brain to certain brainwave patterns, like for instance, theta is commonly associated with meditation, delta with deep state dreaming. So there is that aspect of it, but
you're able to target different
wavelengths.
Okay,
yeah,
cool.
But to be honest, I very rarely do sessions like that unless I'm working with a client specifically for that purpose. Like they want to get better at meditation, we work on that meditative range, that theta range, we get them into the theta state, and we train them there. But what I really love about the Lucia Light is the beauty and the harmonization of the brainwaves. When you look at some of the fMRI data, it'll show you that theta and alpha waves are higher than normal, like your resting rate. But what's even more impressive is this really awesome harmonic resonance that it puts your brainwaves into. You look at it. I wish I brought some pictures. Maybe we could post some later on the links or whatever. But
definitely.
The brainwaves when you're in resting state, it's just like all this monkey mind. Like the peaks are everywhere, the chatter's everywhere, and then when you turn the light on, it's just like these nice sine wave, like harmonic waveforms. So I think that's more impressive, really. And from an experiential standpoint, that's definitely more impressive, because that, I think, is what's producing this almost near mystical experience, this amazing altered state of consciousness that's blissful.
Right.
I don't necessarily think that that's specifically theta or alpha or delta. I think that's a result of this immense harmonization and connection that you're experiencing, which is where I see the parallel with psychedelics as well, because I feel like that's what psychedelics do. They break down all these barriers in your brain and allow it all to sort of hyper-connect, and you get that hyper-connectivity with the rest of the world in your experience. So, sorry, I went on a little bit of a tangent there.
Awesome, man. A lot of info comes from this guy. I love sitting with him.
But, the first 2 months, that was it. Just locked myself in, and concurrently, a lot of things happened with my life at the same time as launching this business.
Yeah.
Being a better person is huge. Like if this business doesn't work out, the 3 years of personal growth that I've experienced,
Yeah, the line of work you're in
100% worth it. 100% worth it. And all the people that I've helped, it's been great. So there's been a lot of personal growth that's been happening alongside this entrepreneurial journey as well. So yeah, a couple months in, just kind of getting my feet wet. I don't think I even actually registered my business until November of the year that I bought it. I bought it in September or like late summer, and then I registered the business in November.
Did you buy it for the idea of doing a business, or did you buy it personally?
Yeah, I definitely had the idea of doing a business. I just had no plan. My parents lent me the money.
Yeah.
So I didn't really have to do like a nuts and bolts business plan to get a loan or anything like that. So I had the opportunity to let it organically just happen, which was amazing. And I wouldn't trade that for anything, because it really allowed me to develop a relationship with the light. And I kind of see myself as like I don't really like the word healer, but like a practitioner, and I feel like a practitioner needs to have that intimate relationship with their modality. You know what I mean? And I feel like because of the way that my business came about, I really had the opportunity to do that. So I feel like, I always call Lucia my third kid. It's just like my third baby,
Of course, yeah.
So yeah, I love her, and we connect on a whole other level. And in addition to all of that, so many of my clients early on were saying, the light's so psychedelic, it reminds me of DMT, it reminds me of ayahuasca, it reminds me of LSD. All the comparisons were happening, and up until that point, I had never really I had dabbled with psychedelics, but I had never really intentionally, ceremonially used psychedelics. I messed around with mushrooms probably in high school a little bit.
Yeah.
I've been a cannabis smoker for a long time.
For sure.
But that was sort of the extent of my psychedelic exposure. But after hearing so much feedback from my clients, I decided, I need to dip my toe in the water again and see where that little branch in the tree takes me. And it took me pretty far.
Like a little branch in the tree.
Yeah, let's just say I fell down that rabbit hole all the way to the bottom till it loops back around, and
then found out there was more. And went down.
Yeah, I very synchronistically came into some DMT right around the time that I started my business as well, and that was I don't recommend maybe just jumping right into DMT. Maybe work your way into something.
Yeah,
but,
it depends. Yeah, who you are, but
yeah, totally. It's all it's all personal, and everything's okay, guys. Everything really is okay. So. I tried out DMT for the first time, maybe 3-4 months into owning the light, and it just blew me away. And the guy that introduced me to it also learned how to extract it. So he taught me how to do that, and I do a little bit of medicine work as well as part of my offering with the light, and just sort of the whole deal. I have certain lines of business, and I guess to kind of bring the conversation back around to business. I do pop-up events with Lucia Light, here at Z Float and a lot of other float centers and yoga studios, anywhere that really I connect with the people there, because that's a big part of it for sure.
Definitely.
And then I do a lot of corporate work. I do staff parties, corporate events, conferences, places where people want to have their guests or their their community experience something completely different. I did an event one time where a guy was considering hiring massage therapists to come in to give his attendees some massages, but then he was like, I think I'm going to give them a pineal gland massage instead. So they called me up.
The best massage, by the way.
Yeah, and they called me up and booked me for a couple days. So there's that line of business as well. And then the third line of business that I'm sort of developing is this almost I'm calling it integration coaching, but I honestly don't know what to really label it as. It's where I'm doing really deep transformational work with people, and that's where we get into stuff with medicine and any kind of modality, or really at that point, if we're working that deeply and closely together, it's really whatever you need to get past what it is you need to get past, or get through what it is you need to get through, or as the way I like to see it, integrate whatever you needed to integrate to feel whole again.
Yeah.
So
it's
those
the
are the
extended work you're offering instead of the one rocket ship blast.
Absolutely, yeah. Because that's fun. I'm not going to hate on that. People have been doing that for 3 years and they love it. But I feel like at this point in the business, I want to evolve where to a place where I don't want to call it therapeutic, but where I'm making more of an impact with clients long term. And that's what I'm working towards. So yeah, year one was kind of like just getting my feet wet, figuring out how am I going to do this, what is this, how do I monetize this, how does this work, and I modeled a lot of my my business practices after the float industry because I was familiar with that. And yeah, the pop-up event model is great because I get to travel around to all these different cities and like meet cool people like you.
Totally.
And that's a really fun way to do this gig as well. So I mean, it's the flip side of that is it's tough, on family life because I'm away from my family a lot. But after Austria, at the end of the month, I'm going to Colorado for a conference, and the whole family's coming. So it's nice to kind of like turn that corner as well, because that's been something that's been on my mind for a while. I really miss my family when I travel, and getting to bring them with me is fantastic. It's
for
great.
Sure. Yeah, man, that's gonna be very rewarding.
Totally. So that's the journey that I've been on. The first couple of years just figuring stuff out. Now I'm sort of in my wheelhouse, getting a lot of corporate work and doing, some of my pop-ups are sold out, some of them are really slow today. I don't think I have anybody booked in, but it gives us more time to chat.
Yeah, man.
That's the way it goes. And it's great. It's great. I love it. Wouldn't do anything else.
Awesome, man. Yeah, let's talk about breathwork now that, we got the light kind of not out of the way, but in the picture.
Yeah.
What's your experience been like with breathwork?
Oh man, it's been absolutely amazing. Breath is life. Whether you want to call it like pranayama, chi, what are
all the names for the internal life force, energy source.
But that's what it is, right? It's literally like life. It's consciousness, I think, and it's our way of it's our mechanism of harnessing and transmuting that consciousness into our experience. Right. That's the way that I see breath work. And I say breath work, but I think a better way to look at it is consciously breathing. Well,
yeah, when you're consciously aware of your breath, it brings you here.
Yeah, totally. Well, I think in general, awareness is like a force. Awareness is a creative force. So when you bring that awareness to your breath, which is already such a powerful building block of consciousness, I think you really you double down on what you're doing, because it's being aware and also being conscious of what you're doing with that awareness, and it's like
it's almost like when you are conscious of your breath, you have 100% focus. And then wherever it's like laser beam, wherever you're pointing that laser beam, you're going to go in that direction.
Yeah, maybe some of you have tried out meditating. It's very, very common that you focus on your breath when you meditate, and I don't think that that's like a coincidence. I think your breath is a really powerful tool, and there's something to be said that it just happens. You don't have to think to breathe, but when you do think to breathe and you do bring your awareness and your focus onto breath, I think that really allows you to upgrade a lot of things that are in you, help move tons of energy. I felt a lot of energy move during our breathwork sessions, all kinds of places. And Jake was really the first person that I had done conscious breathwork with. I'd looked at YouTube videos and tried to do that stuff on my own, because I'm kind of that guy who locks himself in the basement and just does stuff.
Does it? Yeah.
I hear that. So that's how I kind of tried to do it. But then I was like, you know what? This is one of those things where I feel like a facilitator would help. And you were awesome.
Thanks, man.
You really it was just guided me through the process in such an easy way that made me comfortable and able to kind of just explore it fully. You know what I mean? Without having to kind of guess, am I doing this right? Is this should I be breathing faster or slower, or harder or softer? And so breathwork's one of those things where I think a facilitator is really important, especially when you're first starting out. Then you can sort of experiment and play around. But those first consults on the basics of breathwork and some of the more I guess nuanced techniques, I think it's really important to have a facilitator. And I've had almost full out psychedelic experiences with breathwork. I think the first time that we did a body ascension breathwork, that was an hour, almost 2 hours, I think. And by the time we were doing that, what was the last breath? The nonstop
mother wave.
By the time we were doing the mother wave and I was focusing on my third eye, I was out. I was gone, and it was Yeah, it was really
I
powerful.
remember you saying that when I was playing the bowls, bringing you back. You're like, oh, I thought I wanted to go the other way.
Totally, yeah, and the sound, the vibration, the sound healing adds another aspect to it as well. Because it is all, that quote from Nikola Tesla, we are all vibration, right? I mean, whether it's like light vibrations, sound vibrations, or, the vibrations of consciousness itself, which is what I think breath is like it's us oscillating and managing our own vibration. So
It's beautifully put, man.
thanks.
Definitely.
Yeah, I love breath work, and I always say this to people. It's like light and breath. We're eventually going to get back to doing our workshops. We've combined the Lucia Light and breath work together, and it's like I honestly thought it was too much for some at some point.
If you haven't experienced the light or the breath before, you want to try one or the other before you do both combined, unless you want to jump off the deep end. But yeah, it's totally out of body. It's transformational.
Yeah,
to say the
absolutely.
least.
So we're gonna get back to doing that. But I was when we first launched that, I remember thinking to myself, like, these are two of the simplest things that everyone just takes for granted: light and breath. And it's just like they're some of the most powerful tools. Like light literally produces everything that we experience. Like, I mean, we wouldn't be able to see anything, color wouldn't exist. And I think light, we're finding out from a scientific perspective, has more to do with our biology than we think. Google biophotonics, or we've just recently found out that our cells talk to each other via light. I saw this really cool video the other day of when a sperm fertilizes the egg, there's like a little spark of light, and they actually recorded it for the first time ever. Yeah. So light is one of these things that it's we're finding out so much more about on a day-to-day basis. It's recently discovered that it's a particle and a wave, which is, if you're a physics nerd, huge. That's a big thing. And flashing light, I think, is going to be a big thing in the future. And breath is just literally everywhere. We need it. Like, I mean, try holding your breath for more than a minute. You need that. You need that, right? I mean, it takes us wherever we need to go.
Definitely. Speaking of taking us where we need to go, I'd love to ask you about your juiciest, your best, your most powerful Lucia Light and or breathwork adventure.
Okay, cool. So it was recently. I was in Colorado. I learned it's not really a new breathwork technique. I think most of them are along the same lines of, like, really super oxygenating the bloodstream.
There's nothing new. It's all tapping into the ancient patterns.
Totally.
Right?
So it was new because it sounded really cool. I was outside the ceremony room, and I heard my buddy's name's Jesus. What up, Jesus? He was doing this. It sounded like this. It sounded like. It almost sounded like he was slurping the breath. Like it was like he was drinking like a bowl of soup or something like that. Afterwards, we talked about it, and I found out that he was at a festival, and him and his wife were calling it vegan whippets, because it sounds exactly like a whippet.
Vegan.
But it was so cool, the technique that he was using to just really blast his belly and his chest with breath. And so he showed me a really quick, efficient breathwork technique that I then did under the light later on that weekend. It was like a retreat that we had. One of the inventors, Dirk, the inventors of the Lucia Light, was in Colorado. So we had almost like a Lucia Light practitioner like summer camp meetup. It was pretty cool.
Sweet.
And yeah, it was. We were doing a big group session. I think there was like 12 of us, all under different. We had like 4 or 5 Lucia Lights, and we did a couple rounds of breath work under the light, and it was really powerful. Like, the experience itself was almost non-dual, dude. Like, I don't know, I'm not sure if any of you have had a non-dual experience, like a completely non-dual experience, let's say like with 5-MeO DMT, or maybe even NN-DMT, where you go to that space where like the recording device is completely shut off. Like, you don't even remember, there's no visuals. I call it the whiteout, you just like go to the space where nothing really makes sense. You just feel like an intense, overwhelming sense of love. And I almost had one of those like non-dual experiences under the light with this breath work. Like, I had to like integrate it afterwards. Like, when I came back, first of all, I was speechless, which is usually the number one sign of when I have one of these like non-dual experiences. And I was speechless. I couldn't really describe what had happened to me, but it was just kind of like that Bill Intense, like, whoa, moment. You know, it was just like
you come back
what
like
just happened? Like, you know, where was I? Am I still here? Like, okay, this is the reality. Yeah, I'm in Colorado. Yep, that's a mountain. Okay, cool. And like you get grounded again. But I had that, and I think it was the breath and the light combined with one another. Now it was really cool. It was a little bit enhanced because spoiler alert, a little bit of like teaser here about the Lucia Light. We're in development of another device that actually controls the intensity of the light as you breathe. So it was pretty amazing. So amazing. As I was breathing, the light was making adjustments. So it was even like I was connected with the light and the experience in an even deeper way. So yeah, it was fantastic, but it was complete non-duality. It was like I lost complete sense of self, and I went to that really coveted space for me, anyways, of complete love and acceptance and oneness. You know, I don't know how else to describe it. If you've ever experienced it, you know how difficult it is to actually put it into words. Mm-hmm. So that was probably my deepest experience with the light and breath together. I've come very close to non-duality with just breath as well, though, and just light as well. Yeah. The light I can speak to pretty easily. I mean, because it's happened to me so many times. You know, there's sort of like 3 levels of the experience with the Lucia Light. It almost looks like sometimes you're like watching a movie. The visuals are like a movie. And then sometimes it's like you're like swimming in the visuals, but then eventually you get to this non-dual spot sometimes where you completely lose sense of yourself and you feel like you are the visuals, like you are this like blue comet thing swirling around. And so I've experienced non-duality under the light. I've experienced it in breathwork as well, where you know, as soon as you do like a retention, for instance, after like a lot of like, you know, quick breathing, I'll do a retention, and I'm in that zone where I'm holding, maybe I'm squeezing a little bit, like pushing it out, and then when I let that breath out, it's just like I just float into like this non-dual space of just like complete.
Does it feel like the light carries you at that point when you like you hold their attention, you let go, and it's like it's
pulling you. It's just like, you know, it's like, where am I going? I want to go.
And you let it go, and like yeah, totally, man.
Absolutely, man.
Totally. That reminds me of my powerful experience in here. Remember when I had the surgery?
The surgery.
Crazy. Yeah, it definitely takes you places. The light's a very powerful device. Cool. Definitely. So let's let the people know how they can find you.
Yeah. So at Lucia Lighthouse is my social media handle. You can find me on Facebook, on Instagram.
I'll drop all the links below.
Yeah. www.lucialighthouse.com is the website. All the goodies are there. I do pop-ups all over, so check your local float center. Give me a ring. Shoot me an email. You know, I do private in-home sessions, even especially for parties. A Lucia Light party is a little bit cooler than your average dinner party, trust me. So those are really fun. And yeah, if you want to see me in your workplace, I do great corporate deals for, you know, lunch and learns. I do meditation workshops, all the good stuff.
Boom.
Yeah.
You've heard it here first, guys. Until next time, have an awesome day, week, month, year. Keep breathing. Peace.
That's dope. We did that at the exact same time.
Really?